is a live, copyrighted presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for RadioLawTalk.com with your host, Frederick Penny, attorney at law. And now, RadioLawTalk.com.
Made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bones. A mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another
Happy Labor Day. You've found refuge from Politics Radio here at Radio Law Talk. You can discuss and learn with us everything about the law and how it affects your everyday life. And yes, we may even have a little bit of fun while we're here.
No, say it isn't so, Fred.
It is so. It is so. It's exciting to be here on a Labor Day, which we're supposed to be out, I guess, playing out in the sun. It's hot in California right now. I guess in the Bay Area, in the Palo Alto, Sunnyvale area, it was like 105 or 104. A lot of them don't even have air conditioners down there. It's so nice and cool down in the Bay Area.
I was listening to a baseball game broadcast out of the Bay Area, not the A's, so whichever one. You'll be able to figure that one out. But I was listening to that last night, and they were talking about how it was the hottest night game played in San Francisco in recorded history. It had been the hottest game to start for a night game last night.
Wow.
In the Bay Area.
That is my co-host. I was going to say Dave Cunin. That's your brother, Todd Cunin. He's got a brother named Dave. I write it down.
He's the better-looking one.
I write it down all the time because I know both of them. They're friends of mine, and I always have to write Todd's name down because every once in a while I'll almost say Dave. And, of course, to my right, my favorite co-host, by the way, Denise Dirks. And behind the glass, we've got Cal Hunter, who's always causing problems, and Seth Madden, our call screener. Thank you guys for helping us out. We appreciate all the help. Couple of interesting things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about disasters and flood insurance and how it affects you, especially we're going to talk about Harvey. We're going to talk about Burning Man, some more stuff going on there. Kraft and Parmesan cheese. My dad used to call it Parmesan cheese, and I think I was mentally messed up from that day because I would walk around and tell people that. And, of course, we meet up with some higher to-do people, and they'd look at me like, well, what did they keep giving me that weird look? And they'd say, it's Parmesan. I said, no. I grew up in a small town. It's Parmesan.
Like it's Target, right?
Yeah, exactly. Where do you shop? Well, a nice French restaurant, or a nice French store, Target. They're all over the place.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then we're going to talk about dangers of being a district attorney or a prosecutor or a judge and about how that could be a dangerous job. We're going to talk about Bill Nye, the science guy. And we're going to talk about the latest up-to-minute news concerning the law. And the most important thing we're going to talk about is Eggo waffles. Let me tell you, I was sitting there studying as usual at 5 a.m. this morning. I studied it the night before. And I was thinking about Eggo waffles, and we're going to talk about that. But
hey, let go of my Eggo.
There it is, let go of my Eggo. A couple of quick things. Remember, we're talking about general law and seek counsel from a licensed attorney for any of your legal needs. Again, we're talking about general law and stuff that has nothing to do with law sometimes when we get off topic, which makes it fun and interesting. But as we stated before, we have a special program here. The program is with law students throughout the state of California. They jump on and they do some research for us. And it looks like we got Michelle Din Tran, who was our helper from the University of San Diego School of Law. Thank you, Michelle, for doing a good job and helping us with our research.
USD, a law school just in my neck of the woods when I was in law school down in San Diego. Nice school. Thank you, Michelle, for all the work you did.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I'm sitting here reading about the law and the most important things we're going to talk about. And by the way, a shout out to the people out in Houston, and our hopes and prayers are with them that all will go well. What a no fun disaster they're dealing with. The LSU Brigham Young University football game was moved from there to the New Orleans Superdome to play because of the floods.
Right.
And there's been a lot of other games that may be affected today because it's college football day, which, by the way, I am a lover of college football.
Me too.
And oh my gosh, and Denise is looking for her Ducks and trying to figure out what's going to happen with the Oregon Ducks. They need them down in Houston, is where they need your Oregon Ducks so they can waddle around in the water.
Save people.
I remember back in the day, I must have only been, 15 years old, 14 years old. This was, and we still had, I think we had a color television by then. But my sister, who was a little older, she was getting ready to go to college. And for whatever reason, in her senior year of high school, as she started the senior year, it was college football season. And because she was getting ready to go to college, she thought that was the time to start watching college football so she could get an idea of the guys she would see when she went to college. And she watched college football all day, every Saturday, just to look at the guys. And
which college did she choose?
she went to Brigham Young University because we would get hate mail if I said what I wanted to say.
Yes.
So
yes,
she went to BYU, and that's where she wanted to go. But I remembered that, and so that's why I don't have cable, because I have a 17-year-old daughter, and quite frankly, I don't want to see her drooling over guys all the time.
In their tights, running around and tackling each other.
Oh, why does that guy stand underneath all the other guys and then hike the ball? Why does that guy stand far back, How come they don't go to the 65-yard line?
Interesting. Hey, another quick thing. Before we aired, we were talking about some funny things, and Cal brought up a funny story. Cal, tell us the funny story about what you did. Don't forget, we test our mics before everything happens, and for those of you who don't know, Cal was actually a newscaster on a big station at one time. And tell them what happened.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, here's what happened.
You do know. That was hilarious. We're laughing so hard.
Here's what happened. Because I turned on Todd's mic, and I said, Todd, would you check your microphone, please? And he thought, in his typical clever Todd way, that he would just mouth the words.
And he wouldn't say anything. And Cal's trying to adjust the board.
Oh, boy, now I got a problem with Todd's mic. I'm running out there. I'm looking at the cables, the whole thing. Well, in Idaho one time, we had a sound guy who was... what's the word I'm looking for? Suboptimal would be the word. Suboptimal. I don't know that he could hear, first off, but that was okay because the technical director was legally blind. He would literally...
You had a blind guy and a guy that couldn't hear running. It was a TV show, right?
Yeah.
Blind guy running TV?
Well, he was legally blind. He could only see one dimensional, so he'd have his eye very close to the monitor, and then he'd switch all the video sources. He was pretty good, really.
Wow. But good for them. We're not making fun of blind people,
but the audio guy, not so much.
Yeah.
So about 3 times in a row, we'd come live and my mic would not be on. So the 4th time I said, that's it. I'm done with this. So he came out and I just started mouthing the next story. And you could hear everybody in the back yelling, fix it, Mike. And finally I started talking, and let's just say the boss and I had a little revival meeting, kind of getting amen.
Yeah. You were suspended for how long?
Yeah, it wasn't that long. It was, a couple of days. But the point was, he said, when somebody else messes up, don't make it your problem. And he was right, of course. But I was an immature, ego-driven newscaster then.
Yeah, so. That's. Oh, you're not ego-driven anymore?
I said immature. Now I'm mature and ego-driven. Big difference.
I'm the immature one now. So,
yeah, we've got Todd Cunin. So.
Thank goodness.
Hey, by the way, here's an exciting thing that's going on next week. We got to announce that we will be at the Gold Country Fair live from 9 a.m. till noon, and it's going to be a great thing. I'm going to be missing that time period because I will be gone, but Todd Cunin will head it up with Denise, and we've got Braden Chadwick coming in, who's an expert at farm law. He does all types of water law, anything to do with farms and ranching. So we're going to talk a lot about farms and ranching next week. So if those of you want to discuss anything that affects land, tune in next week between 9 and 12. So we're going to talk about law when we come back. All those things we've discussed. We'll be right back after this with Radio Law Talk. I'm Frederick Penny.
Tweet us at Radio Law Talk.
All around the world. This is RadioLawTalk.com.
I love Cal's antics that he throws in there. Those little Radio Law Talk all around the world stuff. He makes that stuff up. It's just great. I love the sound of it.
Cal and his creativity.
Hey, you know what?
standing.
Driving down I-80 yesterday, and a lot of cars coming down towards San Francisco that were covered with thick dust.
Yeah,
Thick,
white dust.
White dust. And I don't know about you guys, but when I clean my car after it's been through the mud or dust, I clean it pretty quick. I think they drive down to be cool. This is all Burning Man we're talking about. We talked about it last week. The Burning Man issues concerning, the law and what you should or shouldn't do. There might be some people not driving down because they're still in jail up there. I don't know. We're going to maybe the White Ocean guys.
But you're right. They do it to be cool. It's the same mentality as the people that go skiing that leave the lift ticket on their parka.
Yeah.
They leave the lift ticket on their parka, or they intentionally get that tan that they don't want to talk about at the board meeting on Monday, the sunglasses tan.
Right.
And this is the people that do the Burning Man thing that will leave that layer of dust on their car for what? 4 or 5 days driving. Went to the man. Went to the Burning Man, had a really good time. Haven't gotten around to washing the car.
Well, this year they had art cars. So that was part of the theme, was to have your car all decorated up in a very natural way and show your artistic talent through your vehicle.
Well, I'll tell you right now, Cal told us he's starting this. We're starting this new thing on Radio Law Talk called Case or No Case. And I know Cal said he's going to, I don't, seriously, I haven't heard exactly what it is. I think Denise has an idea. But he's got a case or no case that we have to decide on the fly. We're going to start doing this every week, at least almost every week, where Cal throws something out at us. And I like to do it closer to the break in case I can't think. But I'm gonna go off the fly and let him ask us this question. Apparently, it's something about Burning Man, and we've got to decide case or no case. Cal.
Hey, you may be.
Now it's time to play Case or No Case.
Yeah, case or no case.
I take you now to Nevada, where an attendee at Burning Man claims that he has a case against the founders of Burning Man because he used body paint per their suggestion and suffered an allergic reaction. And so I ask you, case or no case? Fred, I start with you.
That's interesting. Why do I have to start? Okay, let me talk about that. Number one, where's the money? That's the thing I always ask. Is there money to go after? Because if there's no money to go after, why do it? We're not all Taylor Swifts where we've got $1 billion and we don't care about the lawsuit other than getting the $1 paid back, which she did. Most people, if you pursue an action, there's got to be money. Otherwise, it costs them too much money to pursue it. And the lawyers. So my first question is, I'm not taking that, number one, because I don't think there's money involved. The second thing that's important to remember, and especially I'm going to call this a personal injury, is assumption of the risk. You go out to Burning Man, anything goes, man. I'll tell you right now, you assume the risk, you're done, no case, defense on motion for summary judgment, done.
Mr. Cunin, case or no case?
All right, well, here is my not so technical or reasoned analysis. As far as the money is concerned, I believe last week, now Cal, this is a suit against the organizers of Burning Man, correct?
Because they're the ones that suggested or, in fact, instructed that you would art up your body, that you should paint yourself.
Okay, so first, as far as the money is concerned, I believe last week when we talked about Burning Man at $425 or $450 a pop, and we had 70,000 paid attendees, the total amount that they made on tickets alone was in the neighborhood of $30 million, which would suggest to me that maybe there's a little bit of money, but depending on if there's enough to make it worth your while, I don't know. But the issue with this case to me comes down to whether or not you could prove the case, and unless the case said, the owners you're suing said, we recommend, strongly urge you to wear body paint, not just body paint, but this body paint, and gave you the body paint. If it was just a suggestion you wear, and it's up to you to decide what body paint, whether or not you're going to get one that is hypoallergenic or not, that's your issue. We just told you wear body paint. We didn't tell you what kind to wear. So I would say, while there may be money, I agree with Fred, no case, because you can't show the library.
All right, Ms. Dirks, case or no case?
I think that the plaintiff is suing the wrong person or entity and should be at least joining in the body paint manufacturer. I like that. Thank you. I feel like I've won something on a game show.
Oh, somewhere Tinkerbell got. Oh, wait.
I was going to say, that's Tinkerbell flying in.
So I think that, first of all, there's no negligence. I couldn't see any negligence. How would the founders of Burning Man, or the ones that run Burning Man, know that this particular person would have an allergic reaction to some body paint out there? That's the first thing I would say. So I don't see a negligence theory at all. And I don't see any strict liability, and I don't see really any other tort liability that could be.
Now here, so you say no case.
I say no case against the Burning Man people, the ones that run it, and I say, and plus they're a nonprofit too. We kind of, that's not favored to sue nonprofits, right?
That's true. Grandma, old ladies, you never sue, and churches. So the other thing, because a lot of times you lose, the other final thing that's important that nobody's mentioned here is that there will be a lawyer that will take this. Believe me. There's ones that will take anything. I've turned cases down and said, there's no way on this earth that anyone will take this case, and you find out you really took that case.
And you know how you could get your attorney fees?
How's that?
You sue under a private attorney general theory. You sue because it's going to benefit more than just the plaintiff. It's going to benefit a great deal of people out there, and it's of societal importance, and it requires private enforcement because the attorney general won't take this case, right?
Case or no case is our new thing. There it is. They're going to lose the case, and law firm of Penny Associates will not take it.
Hey, I think you want to contact us, right? 1-855-529-7234. That's 855 Law Radio. Or tweet us at Radio Law Talk.
Radio Law Talk. I like that show.
Now back to RadioLawTalk.com, and here's Fred.
6 things you don't know about Eggo waffles. It started in 1936 by 3 brothers who made a batter and a dry mix, and they were actually a mayonnaise company and started Eggo waffles. Mr. Eggo served as the early mascot for the brand. Mr. Eggo was pretty cool looking.
They were a mayonnaise company?
They were a mayonnaise company that started out.
Well, there's 2 things you don't want to mix. I mean, it's not like, they're going, we need to come up with something to compete with those Reese's peanut butter cups. That peanut butter and chocolate's a great idea. What are we going to do? How about waffles and mayo?
Hey, by the way, Reese's peanut butter cups were not around in 1936. It'll probably be Hershey's candy bar. How's that?
Okay, all right.
Yeah. But the Eggo brand once also made mayonnaise, like I said, and potato chips. And guess what? Kellogg's rolls in and acquires them in 1970, and that's where it took off with the famous Lego My Eggo, Cal, in 1972. Remember that?
Lego My Eggo.
I can almost taste it.
That's it. That's the Let Go My Eggo. And that's what started in 1970. I remember as a kid watching that, and I loved Eggo waffles. They're still made in the original location in San Jose, California. That's where they started. They're also in Georgia, New Jersey, and Tennessee, but the original location in San Jose, they're still made.
I'll give you my skateboard for breakfast. Some donuts. I'll go nuts if you don't Lego My Eggo.
Nice. I remember all that stuff.
Okay, that makes sense to me now because Kellogg gets them in 70s, and so they're still in their heyday in the 80s, and that's why Eggo waffles were such an integral part of that hit series on Netflix, Stranger Things.
That's right. That's exactly
because it was set in the 80s, and that show was set in the 80s, and that was a big thing back then.
Exactly right.
I'm a smart man.
Did you know that more than 60% of the frozen waffle, pancake, and French toast market is owned by Eggo? And if Eggo just dominates, and what a great opportunity to eat Eggo waffles that I'd love to eat right now. Today, all Eggo products are made with colors and flavors from natural sources, including the pancakes, fresh toast, breakfast sandwiches. And they do not sponsor us. I just thought I'd bring that up because I was studying all my stuff and I saw that and I wanted to read it and I was excited about it. But anyway, before we get to the most exciting thing, and that's not exciting because it's exciting for me because I love talking about the law. But it's a sad thing about what happened in Houston and the insurance and issues of people wanting to be able to make claims to have their homes or businesses covered. I want to jump into the Kraft Parmesan cheese. See that? I'm so mentally whacked from Parmesan. I almost said Parmesan cheese. Son, pass the Parmesan cheese there. Dad, okay, here you go. And I don't know about you guys, but the Parmesan cheese was a big staple. Now, it wasn't Parmesan. I'm going to call it Parmesan because it was not Parmesan cheese in our family. It was the Parmesan cheese.
He wasn't a Green Bay Packers fan, was he?
No, he was not.
Was it Parmesan like the name of a coach?
No, but he was a Parmesan cheese man, and he loaded it on his. My dad loved his spaghetti, and he loaded it on his spaghetti. And we'd always pass that green Parmesan cheese. Now, a class action lawsuit was brought against Kraft because Kraft owns Parmesan cheese, and that's the Fred Penny way to say it, so just remember that. In the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois or Ois, whichever way you want to say it, where the plaintiffs claims that the label, where it labeled 100% grated Parmesan cheese, Parmesan, was printed on the Kraft bottle is not correct. Because you know why?
It's misleading.
That's what they're trying to claim. It's misleading because it was revealed that 8.8% of what is in there is cellulose that's added to prevent the caking or caking of the
cheese.
The cheese, yeah, because cheese cakes together, doesn't it?
And you know what cellulose is, right?
Go for it.
It's like shredded wood.
Sawdust.
Oh, okay.
Light, very fine sawdust.
Wait, what kind of cheese are we talking about again?
Parmesan cheese.
Which is good because if we can call it Parmesan, we can probably win the lawsuit right now that's going on between the EU countries and the United States because the cheese is from these certain areas, and they don't want United States cheese to be naming their cheese after their areas where their cheese is
a copyright issue. It's a copyright, trademark, intellectual property issue, which the EU is trying to claim that the United States can't be using those names.
Right. It's Parmesan, Assaggio, Feta, Gruyere, that one I don't know if I'm saying right, Gorgonzola, Fontina Romano. Those are all regions.
And I'm glad Denise brought those names up because I still can't even pronounce Parmesan. So why would I even know what those cheeses are?
Well, I hear something as a defense. America is bringing in Brad Pitt, who claims that he has original sketches of the original Parmesan cheese to show that it couldn't be copyright infringement because he. Okay, folks, that's a harken. Listen to the podcast of last week's show. Yeah. You'll know what we're talking about.
That's exactly right. Well, but here's the interesting thing about it: the judges. Now, this was brought up the judge granted a motion to defendants to dismiss. So they granted a motion to dismiss the case on the issue of whether or not the marketing of it and the name 100% grated cheese was deceptive.
Right. They were saying that, is it 100% Parmesan cheese? Is it 100%?
I got her messed up.
Yes,
Listen,
you did.
I got her
did
so
you hear
messed
that?
I got her so messed up.
You're killing me, Denise.
I know. I've got everybody messed up where my dad is going to have the Parmesan cheese the rest of it. Go ahead. Parmesan.
Did the 100% go to the grated nature of the cheese, or did the 100% go to the Parmesan nature of the cheese?
Gotcha.
Parmesan.
Does this have the roots in the old Champagne? Wasn't there a lawsuit also filed about Champagne because it came from the Champagne Valley of France? Isn't this the same kind of thing?
That's the EU thing. That's
the EU thing. That is exactly what it is for the cheeses.
Okay.
In the EU, the European Union.
So what the court held, they threw it out on a motion to dismiss, and that they basically said that the plaintiffs Their argument that it was it's reasonable for consumers should not be expected to understand the intricacies of relating to the shelf life and processing of grated cheese, and they said no, they get it. People aren't stupid. They know it's cheese, and they know there's going to be some additives in there. Basically, the judge said it's kind of common sense.
Yeah, and the judge really said this isn't mislabeling or misleading because on the package itself, it has the ingredients and what is in the Parmesan cheese on the label. So the label on the front was not misleading because the label on the back with the ingredients really informed the consumers.
Yeah, now all these cases, there's multiple cases. There's 50 lawsuits. They're all consolidated into this one case. Now, this is what people think, the case is over. No, it was at the beginning. It was granted a motion to dismiss, was granted with leave to amend. And with leave to amend means, those of you out there who aren't lawyers or don't understand that means the judge would say, I'll give you another chance to redo your lawsuit and redo your complaint and clean it up and make it so it doesn't really follow through with all these intricacies that I don't agree with. Now, what the details of the leave to amend are, we don't know, but at this point they have the right to refile it and change their complaints and change the wording of the complaints. And so that could still be forthcoming.
I just keep thinking about what the average person who's purchasing Parmesan cheese does. Because if you are like me, the only deceptive area in terms of advertising that I could think of when it comes to Parmesan, I'm just going to say it the way that I was raised, that Parmesan cheese has.
I know you were in a much more sophisticated home with black and white TVs,
well,
right?
That's right. Well, the upper crust Yuba City area.
Yuba City, California,
where
close to Rio Linda.
Very close to Rio Linda. In fact, I think it was close second in terms of the area that one radio show personality would refer to. But anyway, so if you're like me, the only deceptive advertising would be if I go to the supermarket looking for that traditional green cone-shaped container that has Parmesan cheese in it, and regardless of what it says, I'm looking for the green container. And if I get that, and it has something other than what I expected, then it would be deceptive advertising. Like if I poured it out and it was grated cheddar. Okay, no, that's not what I wanted.
Right.
Parmesan cheese comes in the green cone-shaped container. It's just the cone-shaped container.
Yeah.
That's the way I would look at it, but that's probably why I'm not a judge.
And the Parmesan cheese is sold everywhere. I mean, we're talking Kraft Heinz sells it at Walmart's and at Target's and Albertsons. So if they can come up with the correct wording, there might be some big bucks here.
Yeah, and not only that, it's a class action, which we've talked about many times before. Here's some quick facts, just so you know. The USDA says the Americans eat over 30 pounds of cheese a year, 11.5 pounds. But my best friend, Glenn Bear, I think he eats 30 pounds a day. But anyway, we're running out of time. We're just going to finish up with this really quick. We're going to be right back with Radio Law Talk and Denise Dirks and Todd Cunin. Call us at 855 Law Radio.
Or tweet us at Radio Law Talk. We want to hear from you.
Thank you for sharing part of your Labor Day weekend with RadioLawTalk.com.
And I can see it in your eyes. There's a memory of the way you used to be.
So, here's a quick question, Todd. I'm going to throw this to Todd.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay, all right.
A statistical breakdown of cheese production by state. Now, it's obvious you're going to come up with maybe a few that are obvious. What is the number one state that produces the most cheese? Number one. He doesn't. And by the way, those of you out there, he doesn't know this.
I'm going to say because. Not only because I'm following their football team a little bit, because I have a guy that I like on their, hopefully he makes the team. I'm going to go with Wisconsin because of the Green Bay Packers, the Cheeseheads. I mean, cheese is what they're all about. I would say either Green Bay or California because California has that whole happy cows make better cheese thing, but I'm still going to stick with Wisconsin.
The answer is you're right. Ding, ding, ding. Where's that ding, 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 Cal? You got to have that one cheat. teed up.
Ding, ding, ding.
There we go. Ding, ding, ding. There you go. The ding, ding, ding is teed up, but barely. It's like only by like a few, like 1, 2, 3% more in Wisconsin and California. They're almost equal in the amount of production.
You know, I mean, I get that because California is such a big state. And we have such a large population, and anytime you have a larger geographical area with more farmers, with more, you're going to have equal. I would be interested to see what some sort of per capita breakdown is, like the amount of cheese produced.
Probably
per
Wisconsin.
farm. I bet
I'm sure it's Wisconsin. And the number one type of cheese that we consume in the United States is what?
Mozzarella.
Mozzarella.
And
really?
Yes, and the food that has the most cheese in it. Pizza.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yummy, yummy pizza.
So this lawsuit we were talking about with the Parmesan cheese is, and by the way, look at our tweet. I guess Seth tweeted basically how to pronounce Parmesan or Parmesan to me on our Twitter account. But here's some other interesting suits that were filed. Trader Joe's is being sued for allegedly underfilling its 5-ounce cans of tuna and therefore misleading customers. It's not exactly 5 ounces is what they're claiming.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the complaints that there were against Subway because they had those foot-long sandwiches.
Right.
And then for the longest time, there were people that were uploading pictures to Twitter and to Instagram where they would take out the sandwich and put a tape measure next to it, and it wasn't a foot-long sandwich.
It wasn't.
So you said for the longest time they were doing that?
For the longest time they were doing that.
How long? 12 feet?
Well, they only had $5, so
that's
it was for $5.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And then don't forget, then Quaker Oats is being sued again. I mean, in a way, sometimes all these companies, these great big, nice companies. I'm saying nice. They're probably not nice in some ways, but you know what? They're American. You know, it's America. Is being sued because the maple and brown sugar oatmeal, which my daughter consumed massive amounts of when she was a swimmer because they just pounded that in the morning, does not contain maple syrup despite the wording and images of maple syrup on the packaging. So there's another lawsuit that's going on. So if you want to jump on the bandwagon and you've eaten that very yummy stuff,
because Fred, I'm going to tell you here as I start to tear up in Radio Land. You can't see this. These are wrongs that need to be righted.
That's exactly.
These are issues that face us as a nation that are just hurting us. I mean,
it's not about the lawyers.
There be no maple in Maple's oatmeal.
You know what, though? It's all about, it's not about the lawyers making money. You know that.
And
it's about protection of the consumer.
Look, I want to know when this is going to happen because this is a wrong that needs to be righted because, dang it, when I go and I order at the McDonald's drive-thru or anywhere else a burger, and if my son wants pickles on it, they are going to tack on a 10-cent surcharge to put pickles on a burger that doesn't have pickles. But if I, in the exact same order a Big Mac with no pickles at all, I don't get 10 cents off. I don't get them to take the pickles off my burger to put it on the other burger. And so if they're going to charge me for pickles, they need to deduct the pickle surcharge, and there needs to be a class action lawsuit because that's worth billions.
The humanity.
All I've got to say is I wish this was live video because we record it. You should have seen Todd's expressions. I swear
I could feel the vein popping out of my forehead.
And you can see Todd's expressions if you watch our YouTube channel, Radio Law Talk.
That's exactly right. So anyway, I remember the time and talking about cereals and foods. I grew up in a place called Pendrin, California, and we didn't have a lot of money. And I'm going to tell you a quick story because we need to get into Bill Nye and the Science Guy who's suing Disney. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But this is important. So we had no money. And so the exciting thing for us is we had 4 boys, and Mom and Dad, we lived on a farm, and Dad was a police officer, and Mom was a stay-at-home mom. And the biggest and most exciting thing was once a month we got to have Captain Crunch. And oh my gosh, because my mom would buy the cheapest brand volume no brand, doodly lotty doodly circles is what they would be called. Instead of Cheerios, that's what it was. So for us, that was the heyday. And my oldest brother, which I won't mention his name, is we would do this thing where we'd each get a little bowl, and it would last about 2 days, and there's always that last part where there's about one bowl left. So my brother got up around 5 a.m. in the morning, and I knew he was getting up because I could hear him. And he went downstairs, and I heard the ruffling going downstairs. I heard some clanking, and I got up, and my other brothers got up. This was more important than Christmas morning. For the last bowl of our monthly ration of Captain Crunch. And as I got down there, and this is why I'm such a good lawyer. I'm sorry, I'm going to tell you I'm a great lawyer. And this is why I'm a good lawyer. And my brother, by the way, is a lawyer too. And so as I walked down there, he has a bowl of that Captain Crunch popping with the milk. Oh, just think about it. And he was putting his first bite into his mouth. And I walked up and said, "Dude." I don't know if I said dude, but it was probably like, "Hey, dude." It's kind of more like that. And he said, "What?" I said, you got to, that's 4 ways. You got to break that up 4 ways. There's 4 boys left here. And he said, "Okay." And he put that in his mouth and spit it out back into his bowl. Just slobber. And you got to notice that my brother, he had big lips. I'm going to tell him, I used to call him Big Lip. But anyway, so it was all the slobber came down and went into the bowl. And he's like, all right. I'll split it up 4 ways. I said, of course, me thinking, all right. So I took it. He goes, "You guys got to split it up?" "You bet." So I picked it up, went up and grabbed a bowl, and he's smiling and laughing. I walked over to the sink, dumped it down, and turned the disposal on. Nobody gets it now. He was so mad he chased me around. So I won. I was the smarter lawyer as a 8-year-old boy, man. I'm the winner. So that's how I became a lawyer. After that, they said, "Man, you got to be a lawyer. You're perfect. You were thinking about that."
Now, was one of the only reasons you guys had it once a month because it took a month to recover from the cuts on the roof of your mouth that you typically get from eating Captain Crunch?
No, that's from the sawdust that we were eating on the other cereals that we could have sued for the label issue.
And speaking of sawdust, that reminds me of a nice line that Cal reminded us of with the Parmesan cheese. And Denise, you brought out that cellulose is wood, right?
It's wood pulp.
It's wood pulp. So one of the things you want to make sure that when you get your Parmesan cheese, you don't want to have to be checking for termites in the Parmesan cheese because there's wood pulp in there.
Can we stop now?
Yes, I have. That's my sentiment.
I don't want to stop talking about this.
Talk about being set up. Cal comes in and says, "Hey, you got to mention this. You got to mention." And I finally give him props, and I get the, "Can we stop?"
Well, it was a good line until these guys heard it the second time.
That's exactly right.
But our listening audience didn't hear the good line.
They were chortling, but Fred and Denise were going, "Oh, right, he's going to go there." You could tell.
Exactly, I was going to go. Oh, okay, so I get it.
Denise is here for one reason. That's to keep you and I in line, and she's not doing a good job.
I am not. And we have 1 minute left, and we want to hear from you. So tweet us at Radio Law Talk. Call us at 1-855-LAW-RADIO, or email us at www.radiolawtalk.com.
And we're going to talk about Bill Nye, the science guy, suing Disney, and Denise is going to get into that a little bit later, but I got to throw one more thing in.
Okay.
Do I remember, I'm going back to my Penryn days as a kid, and we had no money. I remember my favorite things were those Hostess, remember the Hostess little donuts?
Yes.
And by the way, I'm going to diet everybody out there in Radioland. That's why I'm talking about this. So anyway, the Hostess donuts, he used to buy the old ones that you can buy for like 5 cents that are expired. We put them in the freezer. We eat them all day long. We'll be back with Radio Law Talk, and we will talk some more law if Todd and I will get straight.
The following is a live copyrighted presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for RadioLawTalk.com with your host, Frederick Penny, attorney at law. And now, RadioLawTalk.com.
When you're tired of politics radio, sit right here and listen to us. Who needs law school when you got Radio Law Talk and the co-hosts Denise Dirks and Todd Cunin and Fred Penny, right? We're here in the studios with our producer Cal Hunter and our call screener Seth Madden. Thank you very much. Happy Labor Day, and it is hot outside. Thank you, Michelle Din Tran from University of San Diego School of Law, for helping us out doing our research. If you want to call in and talk to us, this is our second hour. It's 855 Law Radio, or tweet us at Radio Law Talk. Go to our website, www.radiolawtalk.com. We're excited to be here. We're going to talk about Bill Nye, the science guy, about his suit against Disney. And then Todd's going to also talk about dangers of being a district attorney and those prosecutors and judges that really have dangerous jobs. Everyone thinks the glamour of a judge or the glamour of a prosecutor, you watch it on TV, but it is actually really dangerous. And we've got some interesting stories, and Todd's got some interesting stories to talk about. Remember, the most important thing is we're talking about general law. Seek local counsel, or counsel that's not local, from a licensed lawyer about or for all your legal needs, because you know what? Really, every single case is different, and we talk about general aspects of law here, and man, it can vary from one thing to another. And I have a lot of clients that ask me, well, here's my case. These are the facts. What's it worth? Huh? I don't know. Anyone that tells you what it's worth after about 15 minutes of talking about your case, it's worth X. There's not in reality world.
And anybody who tells you what it's worth, or in my case as a criminal attorney where money is not the outcome, anybody who can tell you what your chances are of beating a case or being found not guilty or doing something, look, you got to understand those are ballpark figures, if they even give them at all. I'm very uncomfortable doing that.
With a capital B, too.
Yes, because anything can happen. I remember before I was a DA, I did labor and employment, and we did some of the civil stuff. And I remember this piece of advice from a very seasoned litigator who said, Todd, there are some things too important to leave to a jury or a judge.
That's exactly right.
That's why we negotiate. And a little tip here for anybody that is thinking about going to law school. You hear people that will say, well, so-and-so says I'm really good at arguing, so I should go to law school. I should do this. And my response to that is, maybe you shouldn't go to law school, because arguing is what lawyers do when everything else has failed. It's always nice to have that quiver or that arrow in your quiver to be able to do that, but arguing is what you do when all of your efforts to negotiate and come to some sort of reasonable conclusion fails. I mean, lawyering is negotiating.
I always feel pretty comfortable to give a range. I can discuss best case, worst case scenario, and that way there's a range. And what that does for my clients is it allows for them to make an economic decision, which in family law sometimes is very difficult to make an economic decision.
I like to give the range too, $0 to $1 billion. That's what I think we're going to win.
That's what I do. I go, well, what can I expect? Well, anywhere from acquittal to 25 years to life.
Any questions?
Somewhere between those two.
Yeah. That doesn't sound very good.
Thanks for narrowing that down for me there, buddy.
And by the way, here's your bill. We're also going to talk about disasters, flood insurance, and some tricks of the trade, and some interesting issues about flood insurance and the nuances of it and the loopholes. And the feds have a flood insurance policies, and that's going to be really important for you to listen up to. We're gonna probably get to that our third hour. We're here for 3 hours, as Todd Cunin said in our very beginning of our first 3-hour show, is bring the deodorant. and don't forget, next week, which would be, what's today? The 2nd? Is today the 2nd?
Today's the 2nd. So next week would be the 9th.
So on the September 9th, the Gold Country Fair is going on in Auburn, California. They want us there. We're going to be center stage, Radio Law Talk from 9 to noon.
Live.
And if you want to come meet us or say hi to us, that's great. We'll have some Radio Law Talk mugs. We'll probably have a couple shirts. We're going to interview, and we're going to talk talk a lot about farm law. Everything to do with, we've got to have the expert, Braden Chadwick, rolling in here, a good friend of mine that is a superstar lawyer when it comes to, law concerning the land, or he does
water rights,
mineral law. He does anything to do with that affects farmers, really. And he's going to roll in here, and he's a little bit boring, but we're going to try to see if he's exciting.
I'll tell you something. When you guys were both gone, doing at a conference at a tropical location to be unnamed, but let's just say it starts with an H and rhymes with Blowayi. So when you guys were gone, Braden Chadwick was on with me, and
That's right.
Great guy and very knowledgeable, really quick on the uptake. I look forward to doing a show, but obviously look forward to being with you, Denise.
You know what I'm excited about?
Yes, what?
I'm going to be interviewed on K-High, and I'm looking forward to that by Mary Jane Pop. And that will be from 1 to 2 next Saturday as well at the Gold County Fairgrounds.
Gold Country Fair.
Gold Country, sorry.
You're going to have a full day, 9 to noon, and then 1 to, or 12 to 1, or 1 to 2?
1 to 2.
1 to 2.
So you get an hour break.
I get an hour break. I can go look at the fair.
She can go have some Parmesan cheese on some spaghetti.
Parmesan cheese on some, let's just call it spaghetti. Get some Parmesan cheese on some spaghetti.
Hey,
all right, let's
talk about Bill Nye. She's getting us in order.
I know.
Let's talk about the law.
All right. Everybody knows the popular show, Bill Nye, the Science Guy. And it aired from September 1993 to June of 1998. And Bill Nye won 19 Emmys as a result of that. He does have a science background. He has a BS in engineering. And he...
There it is.
All right.
All right.
So he used to be a mechanical engineer for Boeing, and while he was there, he invented the hydraulic Renaissance suppressor tube, which is used on 747.
I know about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty good. That's definitely an inventor, right?
I'm just teasing you. Like, what? It's a what now? Say it again. I want to hear it.
Hydraulic. Maybe I said resonance wrong. I guess I don't even know what that word is, but it's resonance. Resonance. See, you got me in Parmesan now.
It's a resonance thing that helps detect the Parmesan cheese
with the sawdust.
With the sawdust and the termites on your spaghetti. I like this.
Yeah, Your Honor, this is Denise Turks. I'd like to make a motion for some... she's all messed
She's not even pronouncing her name right. It's D-Nice. D-Nice. That's her name. It's not Denise. It's D-Nice.
Oh, we're having too much fun.
Oh, my goodness.
Change everything
Denise,
up here.
Denise, keep us in control, man.
I'm trying. So, you know who he sued?
Disney. Well, actually, it's Disney's parent company or something.
It's actually Disney and its subsidiaries.
Yeah. So what's I think it's called, the subsidiary is called...
It's Touchstone, ABC, and Buena Vista.
Buena Vista is the main
Buena
one.
Vista was a television station. And one of the things that he's suing for is contracts and fraud law, and he's suing for fraudulent concealment, fraudulent inducement, breach of contract, and breach of fiduciary duty, because he claims that they did not, in their accounting, they did not properly tag, if you will, the income and revenues, and they improperly tagged things as expenses, and he's owed $9 million.
Yeah, because it's usually like they do all these different things that are like percentages is what they do. They'll do a certain percentage, and it's according to this or that. You get extra money, or you have to pay for this expense. It's not just a flat fee a lot of times, is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. So tweet us at Radio Law Talk, and we want your questions.
We're going to talk more about Bill Nye, the science guy, and the lawsuit against Disney right after this.
Is RadioLawTalk.com.
Looking at Bill Nye's website here, it looks like he makes appearances. Bill, come on Radio Law Talk if you want to talk. We can help you out. We're lawyers. We can try to figure out your Disney issues.
You could come on. We'll talk about all sorts of things.
But you know what? I guess we can't solicit. We're not soliciting you as becoming your lawyers, but we can talk to you about it here on Radio Law Talk. But I'm sure he charges for appearances, but I'm going to start charging for appearances from here on out. You guys want me to appear at something, maybe a kid's birthday party, wearing a clown suit and a little red nose? I'm there.
I'd pay for that.
I'm envisioning one of those VH1 Behind the Music episodes about 10 years from now. When did things start to go south for Fred Penny? Well, he was a very successful lawyer, and then he started doing children's parties as a clown.
That's exactly right. Denise, what's going on with Bill Nye? Don't let us get off track here.
Well, he discovered that there was an accounting error in 2008, but he just brought the suit. So
that's a long time ago.
Yes. So hence, I think that's why he's alleging fraud, because it's a discovery issue, correct? And when he discovered there was an accounting error, he then employed an external auditor to investigate, telling Disney in 2014 that he was auditing the company. Disney responded that he would have to wait because they were just too busy. They're involved in all these other lawsuits. And we are not going to get to you for like 2 or 3, 4 years, baby. We're backlogged with audits. And so then he asked for Disney to produce the licensing agreements with Netflix and Apple, and wanted to know the sales from all of its websites, because he claimed he was, not given his percentage of net profit. He has a 16% interest in that 100% of the net profit. He splits profits with some of his other partners and other entities. So he, just in a very brief look in the audit, they found hundreds of thousands of dollars that they believed were not paid. And hence, he then sued for $9 million because he hasn't finished the audit.
But Disney is cross-complaining against him, suing him, saying, so he opened this can of worms saying, actually, we paid you too much, and now you owe us.
That's right. And what is that? It's like $500 and some odd $1,000 or something, right?
Right.
And they claimed that they overpaid him and give him notice when they had overpaid him. So
what we're talking about here is a legal issue that you always have to understand if you come in as a plaintiff, that not at all times, but sometimes your defendant, you better make sure you got your T's crossed and your I's dotted, because if they cross-complain against you because they find out, oh, you let us open the books, oh, we missed it, we actually paid you too much, now you got a suit against you and you're in trouble. Sometimes that happens where they'll lose, the plaintiff will lose, and the cross-complaint will win. So it's like, whoopsie.
And in California, the statute could have run on their claims, but they can still use it as a defensive move.
Mm-hmm. And hearkening back to my law school days, which is quite a while ago, I remember that they said that there were two, in law school it was said that there were two entities, that if you had to bring a lawsuit, there were two entities, especially from a personal injury standpoint, but even this contract dispute, that you did not want to take on. One was Ford Motor Company.
Correct.
And the other was Disney. Because for the longest time they had a we don't settle policy. If they wanted the word to get out there that if you're going to take us on, it is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight in litigation, and good luck finding an attorney that can bankroll that.
You know what's interesting about that? On the plaintiff side, obviously, we are plaintiffs' lawyers, and Penny & Associates, we're throughout California, and we do a number of cases. It's very difficult to sue certain people or certain companies, and it's not necessarily because you don't think you're going to win or they're going to fight you. I'm good with the fight. We'll take it all the way to trial, and that's our law firm is very aggressive that way. We have a lot of former insurance company trial lawyers that work for our firm, super trial lawyers. But what's interesting is, Denise, is you don't sue older ladies. We do all the time, because if there's an auto accident, you sue them. But just know, when you walk before the jury, and this is what people don't know, did you know that the jury is not told in California that the person that you're suing has auto insurance? So if an old lady hits you and injures you severely and you take her to trial, the jury is not told this lady has a nice insurance policy. As far as they know, it's coming out of her little old home. And that's difficult, and that makes it very difficult at times as plaintiff lawyers to bring cases as little old ladies, you know.
She's on a fixed income, and she's not going to be able to watch Matlock or get her medications or do it because you're taking it from her.
Well, you can't. I don't know if the judge would let him say that, the defense, but that's what the jury assumes.
That's the implication. If you can't say that she has other means to defend her to pay anything,
that's right.
They're naturally going to think that this is coming out of her pension, her retirement, her means to live.
Yeah, and on the flip side, we love it when we have the really nice little old lady walking in as a plaintiff that's injured too. We love that because they like her right away. This is what the best part about a personal injury lawyer. If we're ever a plaintiff's and injured in an accident, we're going to have Fred Penny here. Anybody want to feel sorry for him being injured in an accident? No.
Well, and I wonder how that plays out with the Bill Nye thing. Because if this suit had been brought, say, back in the 90s, when Bill Nye was viewed as this great guy that is, he's got this kids show, Bill Nye the Science Guy, he never really waded into anything too political. Right? So he had this great following. Won, what did you say, 19 Emmys?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, he did.
He won 19 Emmys. Well, now he's weighed into a lot more political things, and so his popularity may have gone down a little bit.
No, actually, it's gone up. He was on Dancing with the Stars. He was on the Big Bang Theory.
Maybe it went down because he went on Dancing with the Stars. I don't know about going up.
He has a new Netflix series called Bill Nye Saves the World.
I mean, he's trending, but that doesn't mean he's not controversial. Anytime somebody goes up in popularity, it also increases the number of people that might not like him. It gets to be a little bit more of a crapshoot in front of a jury as to whether or not he's not going to go in like the favorable little old lady that Fred was just talking about. So I think he's got some things that go back and forth with him.
I think neither of them are. They're going to feel sorry for her. I don't think a jury's going to feel sorry for either of them. But we're going to continue talking about Bill Nye. We're going to wrap it up here in a few seconds after this break. I'm Frederick Penny. This is Radio Law Talk. Tweet us at Radio Law Talk.
Go to the website, radiolawtalk.com. You can listen to the show there, and there's a lot of other good information, too. That's radiolawtalk.com.
So we're talking about juries and the Bill Nye issue, that nobody's really going to feel sorry for Disney nor Bill Nye. And Todd, I know you've brought up a few issues about juries and how the issue on each case is not the issue, but the validity of a case, or whether or not you're going to win a case, or the possibility of winning a case, has to do with a lot of the jury and who you pick.
It really does. I mean, I think we were talking. Some things are just too important to leave to a jury because you have a lot of control over a case. But once it gets to the jury, those individuals are going to be listening. They will think about any and everything. And I had an interesting story back in my days as a prosecutor when I was supervising some newer attorneys. We had this guy come in, and he went from the civil realm and became a prosecutor, and he was supposed to be a really good litigator, but I talked to him about, look, when you're doing jury selection, that's your chance to endear yourself to the jury, and I have a recommendation that you come up with an anecdote to try to talk about some legal principle that says something nice about you. And the one that I always use when I talk about the difference between circumstantial and direct evidence is the story about my son way back in the day. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and you hear that bump in the middle of the night. It's one of those things where you wake up at 2 and you're like, I shouldn't have heard that bump. I better go check out and see what's going on. And I walk out to the kitchen, and this is what I see. The freezer door is open. The chocolate ice cream is tipped over, and there's a trail of chocolate going from the freezer down the hall into my son's room, my 4-year-old son. And I go in, and there he is, passed out asleep with a little chocolate goatee. Now, is there any direct evidence? Did an eyewitness that saw him eat the chocolate? No. But could I prove that he did that circumstantially? Absolutely. So I tell these guys, now look, you want to go ahead and have an anecdote like that. So this one attorney's first trial he was doing, and I was sitting with him to supervise, and he sits down, I'm sitting there, and he stands up in front of the jury for jury selection, and he starts off, and he says, ladies and gentlemen,
do his voice. You did a different voice.
He says, ladies and gentlemen, I have 2 very large creatures living in my house right now. One is my 165-pound St. Bernard. The other is my wife, who is 8 months pregnant.
Whoopsie.
As soon as he equated his spouse to the 165-pound St. Bernard, I'm looking around at all 90 potential jurors, because we haven't picked a jury yet.
Oh, no.
He lost every single female that was out there and half the men. I don't care if it was a joke about your own spouse. He lost them all. Now, this case, in my opinion, should have been a pretty easy case. It was about to win. The defendant was in the car with her kids and rammed her ex-husband's car because he was late on the drop-off, and it was an assault case. This is the effect on jury selection. It was a full-on acquittal. They didn't do a hung jury.
Yeah.
They acquitted. We finally got a jury. They acquitted the defendant, even though the facts were not in dispute that she rammed his car. That is how much this jury did not like that story.
I'll bet the jurors themselves wanted to take their car and ram it into that prosecutor.
And prosecutors, I sat down with the guy afterwards. I said, why do you think you lost the case? And he said, well, I think that maybe I needed to hammer the law a little bit more. I needed to do this. And I said, no, you lost that case in jury selection the minute you told that story. And it was tough, but you're right. There are people that would want to ram that prosecutor's car, and that leads us to talking about how difficult and dangerous it can be to be a prosecutor or a criminal defense attorney.
Yeah, let me go back to that story. What's interesting, defense attorney sitting there, I'm assuming there's one attorney, is saying to himself, as they're just starting to pick the jury, before he says this, man, maybe we should stop this and get a plea deal. And he said that, and he said, no, let's go.
Yeah.
Hey, before we move on, I want to really thank Michelle Din-Tran. She's from University of San Diego School of Law. She's done our research for us today. We really appreciate our law student interns that do the research for us, and we thank her very much.
Thank you very much for that.
Go ahead, Todd. So, to being a prosecutor, you're a prosecutor for how many years?
I was prosecutor for 10 years in 2 different jurisdictions, here in California, and then for a year also out in Northeast Tennessee. And
wow, that's a little bit of different places.
Yeah, it's like stepping into a different world. I loved it out there. Loved Tennessee. I'd retire there in a heartbeat if I could retire.
Would you be a volunteer football, or who's your team?
Oh,
none.
Look, if I went out to Tennessee, I would still follow the. I would still follow the NFC. So I'll tell you what, it's hard to be religious in California and be a fan of the NFC West because the games are all on during church. But out in the East Coast, the games on the West all come on about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
There you go.
So it's much easier to be religious and be a fan of the NFC West, so I wouldn't change. And I might start going to church again.
There you go.
So, that would be well.
This is why God allowed DVRs to be invented. You do know that, right?
But I don't like watching DVR sporting events because it's too easy to cheat. I'm also the same guy that skips to the end of book. Like, how's this going to end?
Yeah, that's exactly it. All right, well, tell us about being a DA. But
it is tough.
How is it tough?
In the news, for example, and this is just in the last couple of days, there's a DA down in San Bernardino County. And I get the impression that because this was a Newport Beach, that maybe it was a trial being handled out of county, but whatever. She is in the middle of a trial. It's reported that it was a gang-related trial, and either the night before or the day before closing arguments were to commence in this trial that she's doing, she was attacked outside a gym when she was on a jog to exercise. And I mean, they said it wasn't just a little bit of blood. Like somebody poured a bucket of blood over her head and trail of blood going into the gym. And they're investigating this because they believe that it may have been in retaliation for the prosecution work that she's doing on the case.
Which is gang. A lot of times it's gang-related.
It's gang-related, So you see this. You can always tell if something might be a hot topic when you see movies made that have this as their theme. For example, Tom Cruise was in a show called Collateral with Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx, a cab driver, taking Tom Cruise around. He's a hitman. I don't want to do much of a spoiler alert, but the ultimate was this guy's trying to take out people who were involved in a trial, including the prosecutor. Okay, so you see Hollywood making movies along this, and it gets dangerous.
Well, you see it. Judges are getting shot. Nevada, there was a family law judge that was shot while he was in his chamber. So they had a high-powered, scope
from a distance.
From another building.
There was a judge down in Stockton who had a defendant, I believe, was in custody and hopped the railing to attack the judge on the bench during a court proceeding. You have people that attack the DAs. It's a people that even attack defense attorneys.
Right,
and family law attorneys. Actually, the number one violence against judges and against other attorneys are in family law matters.
Right, they think it's criminal, but it's actually family law matters.
It is.
Because it's almost a no-win situation. You know that, and I know that, and those people out there who have dealt with family law issues, it's a no-win. I mean, it really isn't. It's a sad thing, but it's a no-win for everybody.
I've had the opportunity, I guess you could call it, to be on both sides of the issue here, being a former prosecutor and now being a defense attorney. And I can tell you that in my prosecution days, take an average ordinary case or a case that's got victims that might be highly charged. So the DA meets with the victims and meets with the victims' families, and I guarantee you that the victim or the victims' families are all saying that the system is too light on defendants, and the defendant's just getting away with this, and how dare that person not get life in prison for this or that or whatever. And then I guarantee you that the defense attorney is having a conversation with their client and their client's family about the exact same scenario where they're saying the system is not fair, the defendant is being charged unfairly, and the judge is in the pocket of the DA, and they're bending over backwards for the prosecution, whereas you have the prosecution saying these people are saying they're bending over backwards for the defense. And it gets back, and I'm not going to make judgment as to whether or not one side their claim is true or not, but what I will say, and the reason I'm saying all of this, is because it's evidence that it's a highly charged system. Highly charged scenario, a lot of emotions going back and forth, and sometimes you run into people that just don't know how to deal with those emotions. They resort to violence. They want retribution. And like family law attorneys and criminal defense attorneys, prosecutors, you get those wingnuts out there that want to do that. It's tough.
Well, here's the thing. In family law, it's especially when children are involved. It's so highly charged when children are involved. It's just a fluid situation when it comes to, 1 minute things are going your way, and you know this, Denise. The next minute they're going against you. And when it has to do with your child, and I know my children, I love them to death, and you love your children to death. If that had to do with my children, it's very difficult to give them up. We're going to talk more about this when we come right back on Radio Law Talk. Tweet us, Radio Law Talk, or call us, 855-LAW-RADIO.
We want to hear from you.
All around the world. This is RadioLawTalk.com.
We're talking about how highly charged the emotions are during trials, especially in a criminal case or a divorce, child custody case, and how it really is a difficult situation for the attorneys.
It really is.
And for the judges.
Yeah.
And it's not just the child custody. Believe me, lots of times there's lots of money involved. So people get real tense over money or having to pay money.
Yeah. So there's also what's happened. Penn State. Remember, there's those Penn State hazing issue.
Yeah, the judge in that Penn State. Well, first of all, let's just say what it's about. There was a teen named. What was his name? Tom Piazza.
Yeah.
And Tom Piazza was involved in a hazing incident with Penn State frat. And that frat had gotten him wasted. I mean, there's no question about it.
Alcohol. Yeah,
alcohol. There was alcohol involved, and he was truly wasted. And he was vomiting and, laying on the couch, and they let him just kind of twitch and lay on the couch. Well, apparently, instead of getting him help, they just kind of let him sleep. Yeah. And then he got up in the middle of the night, and he fell down the stairs, and he suffered traumatic brain injury. And
we talked about this before with
Right.
Chris Rodriguez. That's why we're kind of quickly going over it. We've already go listen to our podcast. We've talked about it. But
yes, but what the judge did is he threw out all of the felony charges for manslaughter and assault charges Friday. Now they're still looking at other charges like hazing and giving alcohol to a minor.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a highly charged case.
It is, and you have here you have the family, the Piazza's family, is upset. They see these charges. They view these kids as being these self-serving rich kids that just, were only looking after their own stuff. These stuff gets thrown out, but a lot of times they take their cues from the conduct of the attorneys in the courtroom, because during this proceeding,
the one at Penn State.
The one at Penn State, according to one of the reports, there was it's reported that several times loud arguments erupted between prosecutors and defense attorneys in the courtroom. This is on one of the articles I'm reading here. Defense attorney stood up, pointed at the Center County District Attorney, and told her, quote, "Stop lying and tell the truth!" Exclamation point, close quote. When you have an attorney in the middle of a courtroom and arguably in front of a jury stand up and make that kind of accusation to the prosecutor, first off, there's a question about whether or not that is even appropriate courtroom decorum. And
no, there's no question. It is not appropriate.
And the judge should take control of that, and I believe the judge at several times demonstrated the judicial frustration and threatened to throw both sides out of the courtroom and then had to restore order in the court. But that is going to be carried outside, because when you see the defense attorney say that to the prosecutor, then the family who's supporting the prosecutor, because the prosecutor standing up for the victim, is now going to want to take it to the defense attorney, and that's where things get dangerous for a defense attorney.
Right.
In a situation
I'm surprised there wasn't a mistrial. I'm surprised there wasn't a mistrial on that.
Yeah, what's interesting about that too, and I'm not trying to digress, but a lot of people don't realize, well, can you have a camera in there or not? Did you know it's up to the judge? Every judge is different as to what type of media is allowed in the courtroom. And I know a number of judges and prosecutors, and I know one judge specifically that does not it's very rare they'll allow any sound or microphones in the courtroom, but they will allow a camera. So you can record it, according to this judge, but you can't bring any microphones in to listen to what's going on. Yet other judges don't even allow cameras in, and some allow the microphone. So every single judge is a little different.
And there are some states where you still cannot take a camera in the courtroom.
True.
And in federal court proceedings, you still can't do it there, right? Or is there certain
California, you cannot.
Right.
California, you cannot take any kind of a recording device yourself as a litigant or a person observing. They cannot take any kind of camera or any kind of recording device in and record anything. It's a felony.
And that's true, but judges can if they decide, like the OJ trial.
Correct.
The OJ trial, they allowed everything to be filmed and listened to. So,
and do you know why they can't have most of the recording devices, especially video recording devices, is because the courtroom sketch artist union is so good.
No, that is funny you say that.
At negotiating legislation that they don't. Cal is looking at me right now like, I can't believe he just said that.
Well, on the federal level, it doesn't surprise me.
Well, yes.
But here's what's interesting. You guys laugh about that. Remember the Michael Jackson case where they're saying that he was doing things that are inappropriate.
Child molesting.
But I don't want to get into that detail. Well, they had put Macaulay Culkin up on the stand, and he was testifying. And we know a lot of these court reporters. We know the people who do the drawings. And I have the original drawing that went out all over the world. That they did this little drawing of Macaulay Culkin on the stand, and it shows a picture of Michael Jackson sitting there with his attorneys. It's a phenomenal drawing, and I've got her signed it, and it's on my wall in my law firm. It's really cool. I love it.
Really?
Yeah. So you can actually, talk to them and say, hey, I'll buy that from you, or just you get a hold of them. But that's a cool thing.
Well, they have a very strong lobby in the courts and among the legislature to make sure that it's still illegal to lose their job because people have actual cameras in the courtroom.
That's exactly right. But, I know there's a lot of prosecutors and judges that literally, don't forget, you think they live in these big protected gated communities. A lot of them live in just normal homes in a normal tract house. and they're vulnerable, in my opinion. To me, it would be scary. I've never been a prosecutor. I've never been a district attorney or an attorney general or a judge, but doggone, I know a few of them that I've visited before, just on a side note, just to come visit them at their home, and I seen a police officer's car out there. What's up?
You could make, just to follow up on that, you could make the argument that people that want to be a prosecutor or a public defender or go and be a judge, to a certain extent, it's a labor of love in the sense that you're not making the big bucks that your other folks that were in law school make that went to a big litigation firm. And maybe you became a prosecutor to get your trial experience so that you could then go and become a litigator elsewhere, because you get a lot of trial experience being a prosecutor or a public defender. But the career prosecutors who become judges, they're not making a lot of money. They're not making bank compared to everybody else. They do okay. They have the security of maybe having a good retirement program.
Let me not interrupt you. Let's throw a caveat in there for what lawyers make, because people out there are going, "What do you mean they don't make?" They make good money, but not compared to what they could be making as lawyers out in the private sector.
And the other thing you need to think also is pretty much uniformly. When a guy or a girl, when somebody gets out of law school, and they get out of law school with debt in six figures, $120,000, $130,000, $150,000.
Right.
Okay, and they become a prosecutor, maybe they get a job at a college that pays them a little bit more than somebody that would make with a bachelor's degree right out of college. But when you factor the amount they have to pay in student loans, and that comes right off the top. Now they're making a little bit less. That was the case for me. My sister graduated with a bachelor's degree, same time I graduated for my law school. And even though I had technically a better job, I was doing worse than she was on a monthly basis because she didn't have six-figure student loans to pay off.
That's exactly right, and that's what's happening now.
It's hard to be a judge. It's really hard to be a judge because you get, and probably even a prosecutor, the DA, all of that, because you lose privacy. You lose privacy. That's a huge thing. And your social circle shrinks. And that's also a very much, so when you look at a judge or you look at these prosecutors that are so dedicated to their jobs, you got to also realize the personal sacrifice that they make to do those jobs.
They have to be very careful what they do, where they go, who they're friends with, what they say. And again, we know a lot of these people, and it's very, very difficult for them. And I feel for them, and I'm not jumping on their side because defense, has their arguments, because that's why I like Todd, because he's done both. He's seen it, both of them. But I feel their pain, and I see how it's like, oh, no, I can't go do that because I might see this person or that person.
And they're supposed to be non-political. So that's why when our Supreme Court Justice Ruth Ginsburg, when she came out and was politically against Trump, that was why there was a huge outcry against her, because she's not supposed to do that as a judge. Judges are supposed to remain absolutely objective, and even in their private life, they have to be non-political.
That's exactly right, neutral. Well, anyway, it's about time to wrap up this second hour of Radio Law Talk. We've had a lot of fun. We'll be back with the third hour to talk more about what's going on in Texas.
Thanks to Michelle Dintran from USD School of Law.
See you next hour.
On Monday. You have been listening to RadioLawTalk.com, a copyrighted presentation of Radio Law Talk Incorporated. Is a live copyrighted presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for RadioLawTalk.com with your host, Frederick Penny, attorney at law. And now, RadioLawTalk.com.
You have found refuge from Politics Radio here at Radio Law Talk. Remember, when you're tired of politics radio, tune in. Who needs law school? You've got Radio Law Talk with Todd Cunin on my left and Denise Dirks on my right. We have in the studio Seth Madden, our call screener, and our wonderful producer, Cal Hunter. Thank you very much for being here on this beautiful Labor Day. We ask for our blessings and our hope and our prayers for the people out in Texas and Hurricane Harvey. We're going to talk about it today. We'd like to welcome those of you who are listening live on other stations throughout California. This is our third hour. We've been here for 2 hours and the deodorant is going on. But we're going to talk about some exciting things that are actually sad, but exciting. And then I like to talk about the law, about Hurricane Harvey, and about insurance claims and how you can try to get some flood insurance coverage, how you can make claims for damages during this flood. The people down in Texas. A little bit about Hurricane Harvey in a minute, but remember, we're talking about general law. Seek counsel from a licensed attorney for all your legal needs. And we'd like to thank Michelle Din Tran from the University of San Diego Law School, who's done our research. Remember, too, next week is going to be an exciting week because we're going to be at the Gold Country Fair in Auburn live from 9 to noon. And who will be running the ship will be Todd Cunin. And we're going to have Denise Dirks there also, my trusted co-host. And we're going to have a guy by the name of Braden Chadwick talking all about farms. I mean, he is the lawyer that understands anything about properties, water rights, farm rights. I mean, anything to do with that in general. He understands it and he knows that type of law. And he's preparing to talk about a lot. We're going to do some interviews with some cool kids in FFA, and we're going to kind of push the farm thing next week and help out the farmers, because that's what it's all about. Is Radio Law Talk. We're not political, but doggone it, we got to eat, and those farmers help us out an awful lot. So we're going to
know what they say: when in Rome, talk about farming.
That's exactly right.
Maybe that's not how the saying goes.
That's not it.
When in Rome, do what Rome. Yeah.
Something like that.
All right.
But anyway, this third hour is usually it's funny, but we kind of just lay back and we're kind of on a roll and we're just kind of cruising through it. And we have a break. We have about a 7-minute break because we could do the national news and we're on satellite radio, SRN radio, and we're in a number of other stations. And during the break, as you guys know out there, and all you beautiful ladies out there are wondering, Todd Cunin is the only single person on our show. Of all the guests, he's the only single one. And Denise was trying to hook him up with her friend. And this is the best part about it. No, I'm getting to this. They're all looking at me going, oh my gosh,
I can't believe you just said that. I'm not trying to hook him up with my friend.
No, friends. So here, let me get to my point. My point is very interesting. Todd, hang on and wait until we're such a big national program. You will have choice of any person throughout the United States because you're going to be such a famous talk show host. Hold out.
Let me tell you something, and this is what I would say to anybody that and I wrote.
Wait a minute, the Twitters are blowing up with the ladies. Tom.
I wrote an essay once. You can find it out on the internet somewhere about what does it mean to be a quote catch. That's not always a good thing because if you're a catch, it's a fishing term, and it doesn't always work out too well for the fish. But
so you're saying they're the fish?
I just tell you right now, I am not a catch, and if somebody thinks that I am, just remember this phrase: no matter how appealing somebody might appear to be, there's somebody out there who's sick of their garbage.
That's exactly right.
And you might want to call my former spouse. She'd probably tell you all about it. So.
That's exactly.
Hey, ladies, if you want to see what Todd looks like, you can check us out at on our YouTube channel, Radio Law Talk, and then tweet us at Radio Law Talk.
You know what? Also, you can go on the website. His picture's up on the website. So maybe we should have a Todd dating. I bet he's on Dancing. Cal, do you think he's going to be on Dancing on the Stars within the next, 2 years?
I would say, and not only that, right now we could actually do a Todd Date-a-thon. We could just take calls and offers.
Will you date this or not?
Date this or not.
Or no date.
Date or no date. Let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you right now that I'm sure you didn't intend this, but to say segue from my dating life to a discussion about the largest natural disaster in U.S. history is more than just a coincidence. So
that is absolutely perfect. Well, we're going to roll into Hurricane Harvey straight from Todd Cunan's Love Life, because that's about, like, that's right, that's about the same. Actually, I think yours was a what? Category what? 5?
Here's the stat for you about Harvey. It is estimated that Harvey dumped 27 trillion gallons of water on Texas and Louisiana.
It's crazy.
Which is second only to the amount of water that has been dumped on my social life.
That's exactly right. He's got a social life. We won't talk about it. But Harvey, you know, is the wettest tropical cyclone on record in the continuous United States.
And it's the costliest national disaster or natural disaster in the U.S. history, with damages around $160 billion.
Wow. And it prompted more than 17,000 rescues. 17,000.
And it was amazing. It touched my heart to see all the people that were out there in their boats with their ski-doos, whatever they could, they were helping and trying to rescue people.
Here's a little bit of perspective for you. Again, $160 billion estimated in damage. Katrina, which was one of the largest in the United States, $41.1 billion in damages. This is massive. The damages and the devastation that occurred, and we've had over 37 deaths, and what a sad tale. And that's what we're here to talk about. A little bit about Hurricane Harvey, but more about the arguments about insurance and whether or not you're covered in insurance, whether or not you've covered for this Harvey disaster, if you've got a business or if you have a home. And there's some very important things we need to talk about, especially the National Flood Insurance Program.
That's right. And whether or not you can even get flood insurance is a major question.
Yeah. So anyway, a couple of things. What you have to remember is there is a thing called homeowners insurance. Now, a homeowners insurance policy is what's called a first-party policy, generally speaking. In other words, if your home burns down, it's you basically against the insurance and getting paid. A third-party claim that you're covered for, if someone gets injured on your property, that's a third party. A third party is coming against you. We're talking about what's called a first-party claim here, whether you can claim something or cannot. Now, here's the question that everybody asks. Well, do I have coverage? There's a couple of different issues you need to look at. When you get your insurance for your home, they will not cover your home for flood insurance. It's an additional thing you have to get, and you get it through the National Flood Insurance Program, which is a government agency. You don't have to necessarily go out yourself and personally go get it. Your agent can go get it, and a lot of times it's not even named, National Flood Insurance Program. It could be named under that insurance company, but it is through the National Flood Insurance Program. So let's talk a little bit about the National Flood Insurance Services. And you can go there, by the way, or you can call, and Seth will throw this up on our Twitter. I think I gave him this information. If you have any questions, you can call 1-800-638-6620 between the times of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we got to roll. We got to come back. We're going to talk more about the NFIP services and flood relief. I'm Frederick Penny. Tweet us.
Call us 855 Law Radio.
Radio Law Talk. I like that show.
RadioLawTalk.com.
Let's go back and talk about Hurricane Harvey and Katrina. Katrina was not $41.1 billion in damages. It was.
So we have some updated numbers. Yes, Katrina was $160 billion in damages, and Hurricane Harvey now is being estimated at being $190 billion, the largest, from an economic standpoint, the largest economic negative impact hurricane on record. And just incidentally, between 1980 And 2017, when you factor the total damages for all the hurricanes over that period, $1.2 trillion in damages.
Wow.
I mean, you're talking $70 billion for Sandy. Andrew in '92 was $48 billion, and these are costs at the time. They
Which is nothing. I mean, $48 billion is nothing compared to this Harvey. What
I know, and you also have to figure that these costs are $48 billion of 1992 dollars, and how that would change in today's economy, I don't know, but still, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Now, something interesting about the insurance issue is that most insurance policies will cover for wind damage, the hurricane, but not flood damage, the rains. And so there's going to be a lot of claims that are going to be made. Check with your policies. Make sure that you understand what damage has been done to your home and how, and make a claim.
Yeah, here's what's interesting, and you're jumping ahead, which is perfect for me to get into this anti-concurrent cause provision. So, without getting in too much detail, because I don't want to go into such legal detail that it bores people out there, and I know this is not boring because this is very interesting. What happens in policies is you have two types of coverages, and this is where all the litigation occurs. There's an ACC provision, which are basically there's exceptions that you're not covered for. So, for example, wind damage on your normal policy, most of the time, again, this is generally because every policy is a little different, but generally, you're covered. But for flood damage, unless you get this flood damage through the government, which actually, like I said, it can be through your normal insurance company, but they'll get it through the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program. You're not going to be covered for the flood. So what happens when you are covered for one part and not covered for another? In other words, let's use a quick example to make it easy. It's so windy during this hurricane, it just blows your roof off your home. And there's not a flood. Your home sits up kind of high, so you're not getting flooded, and you're covered under your policy for wind damage. So you're covered for it tearing off your roof and the replacement of the roof. Now that rains so hard that your roof's off, your whole house is flooded from the rains. That's an exclusion. That is what's considered being flooded. So you've got an exclusion of being flooded. There's no coverage, yet you're covered for the wind damage. So they kind of offset each other. And that's what's called an anti-concurrent cause. That's an ACC provision. And the vast majority of these provisions in your homeowner's policy, guess what happens if there's a conflict? Guess which one wins out? The one that you're not covered for, and that's where all the litigation occurs. So a lot of people claim, oh, I'm covered because the wind blew my roof off, but no, you're not, because now you got a concurrent coverage issue about flooding, and it was really caused by flooding. No, it was caused by the wind. So the litigation is numerous on this issue, and there's lawyers. That's what they do, and that's what we look at, and there's fights about this. But here's the big issue, and here's the problem. You don't, as a normal person, have the money or the time or the stay to fight it for years. You're trying to just get back on your feet, and that becomes a problem. And that's what's happening in the state of Texas. And not only that, it applies to businesses too. When you have a business, there's no coverage in businesses for the issue of whether or not there's damage to your property. Or what about you make $10,000 a month net income and you've lost that income? There's no coverage for that most of the time. Now you can buy that coverage, but now Texas is actually passing a law that they're trying to get that covered, at least to the point where they can't come after you under a Texas law, the creditors, to take your business or to charge you these high interest rates. They're trying to pass a law to protect the businesses from going under, because things like this just damage the businesses extensively.
Well, and in addition, one thing to keep in mind when you talk about litigation, whether it's civil litigation or in criminal law, these things take time. I'm always amazed when I see on a television show, take a criminal law show, for example, where you have the crime, and then 2 days later, the suspect is arrested, immediately arraigned, and they're doing a trial a week later. And it's a death penalty case.
Right.
It would never happen that quickly. And the same thing is true here. You've got the discovery process, and correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, but insurance companies may have an interest in wanting to draw out the litigation process to try to wait out how long people have these resources, and then maybe come in with some low-ball offer to get ahead and get it away just to take care of it because they can and they have those resources. And people are sitting here with no homes. Denise, I think at one point in time you and I were talking about renters who deal with issues like this. People have to move on with their lives. They can't wait for the litigation process.
Yeah, go ahead, Denise.
Well, the businesses are more likely going to suffer not from the flood itself, but from loss of business.
We just talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big issue. Those of you who don't know, Denise had a coughing fit, ran out and coughed, and she's back in here about ready to have another coughing fit.
I need my cough button.
She's her cough button. Yeah, we talked about that, Denise, while you're coughing. But anyway, that's what happens. That's the great thing about it. So, but here's what's interesting. I talked about it, but it's the Texas law going into effect September 1st. It's the House Bill 1774. It reduces the penalty interest insurers have to pay if they're late in paying weather-related claims. The rates will drop from 18% to like 10%. So it's trying to help out the businesses and make sure the businesses don't go under from all this flood damage. Because really, we always talk about homeowners and we talk about how they've been put out, but man, it really affects businesses dramatically. We're going to talk more about the damages from Hurricane Harvey and a little bit more about some stats. We'll be right back. This is Fred Penny, Radio Law Talk.
You're listening to RadioLawTalk.com. And now back to your host, Frederick Penny.
So we were talking about statistics, and everything's so fluid during this time period because things are happening. This one Texas law came down yesterday. Todd and I were correct about the Katrina. I was thinking, okay, so during the break, we're jamming to do our more research because I knew it was $41.1 billion Katrina, but that was for the insurance claims, just the insurance claims alone. Don't forget, there's a lot of people that don't have coverage in insurance. And then Todd's statistic and number includes everything, which is the, 160 billion.
For example, one of the things that's driving Harvey's damage claim up so high is the number of oil derricks that had to stop production in the Gulf. Now, the hope is that they weren't damaged, but for every day those things aren't pumping oil, that is a damage number because they had to shut down operations, and all that goes into the mix. And so the $190 billion for Harvey and $160 for Katrina represent the total economic estimated damages that includes insurance claims and then non-claimed factors. And I mean, when you look at that, that's kind of telling, Fred. $41 billion in insurance claims, right? For Katrina, $41 billion for insurance claims. The total damage was $160 billion. So you're talking about only 25% of the total damage was subject to insurance claims or went through that litigation. The other 75%.
They're not covered.
They're not covered.
I had a friend, she wasn't covered because she had a masseuse business, and her homeowner's insurance said it's a business and not a home.
And by the way, that number is about right because only 2 out of 10 homes that were flooded actually have federal flood insurance. The percentage is really low.
Right, that's exactly right. That's the statistic we're going to get to. Another thing about this Texas law that I just brought up just came down yesterday, Denise.
It came into effect yesterday.
Right.
They'd been working on it for a long time, and obviously it was an insurance lobby, or at least it looks that way, because if an insurance denied coverage to an insured, and it was in bad faith, they would have to pay 18% higher for damages to that insured. That bill reduced that amount to 10%.
Right.
And on top of it, there's a really kind of crazy attorney fee limitation in that bill. If you have to do a pre-suit type of a demand on the insurance company, and if the recovery is between 20 and 79% of that pre-suit damage claim, then you can get attorney's fees. If it's not, you don't get your attorney fees.
So, in other words, you're saying if the insurance offers you an amount that's within that, is that what you're trying to say? Within that kind of that realm, you can't get attorney's fees. So,
it's if the insured makes a demand on the insurance company that is pre-suit, and then they recover between 20 and 79% of that demand,
right?
That's the only way they're going to get attorney fees.
Gotcha.
So it's going to limit the demand. The pre-suit demands are going to be limited because they're going to want to be able to get their attorney fees.
That's true. That's true. Well, there's some interesting statistics that we want to talk about also about floods and flood insurances. But make sure you talk to your agent. I'm sure I sometimes worry about people jumping on the internet and just, I'm gonna get my insurance through the internet. I'm just gonna type in, this is what I want. I kind of like the agents, and agents are all there going, yeah, here's a lawyer saying, but they're gonna help you a little bit with this, and you got to make sure that you get flood insurance. Now, my house is sitting on a hill. I put it on a hill on a reason. I don't have flood insurance, and I'm not gonna get flood insurance. But you never know. You could still, like Todd was saying, and as during the break, what happens if my roof gets blown off and my house gets flooded by a tropical storm? Then I don't have coverage. There could be an issue.
One thing to keep in mind about that Texas bill that people might not understand, it goes into effect tomorrow, or it goes into effect yesterday. But, I'm looking at it right here. This is a bill that was passed on May 26, 2017, before Harvey was even on anybody's radar. So it was passed at the time of good weather. And I'll tell you right now, if I had to pick somebody that was very nervous right now about their political future, I would pick anybody who voted for that bill, because obviously it was passed at a time when nobody saw Harvey, and now all of your constituents are going to feel the effects of this, and they're going to be in a situation, you voted for what? And within 6 months, it's hammering me.
Yeah, and there's kind of a debate going on. Do I file before September 1st, all my claims so that I don't have that limitation, or do I wait and file after September 1st? And then to even file it, there are courthouses all across the state that are closed. They're closed down. How do you file it?
It's so arduous. To get those filed quickly is difficult at best. So here's some interesting, what are my chances? And this comes from the NFIPservice.com. It's NFIPservices.com. And this is basically the website that you're going to want to go to learn more about the insurance coverage for the government's flood insurance coverage. And it says the following. It's 5 times more likely that you're going to experience flooding than a fire in your home. Wow. That's interesting. And you're more likely to have your home burglarized than flooded. And you're more likely to have your car stolen than flooded. So those are some interesting dichotomies there,
I've got a question for you. When we talk about flooding, okay, are we talking about flooding by virtue of natural disaster, or is this flooding in general? For example, what if a water main breaks in your house?
Both. It's both.
So that's covered there.
Yeah, I'll read it. The flooding is defined as a general and temporary condition of complete or partial inundation of normally dry land area by surface water, and the surface water can be from any source.
Okay.
In order for the damage from the flood to be considered under the flood policy, the flood needs to be a general condition, which means that it must affect 2 or more properties, one of which is yours. So it could affect yours and or your neighbors. Or if it's confirmed to be just your property, it must cover 2 or more acres of land. Isn't that bizarre?
Wow.
So my point is, I'm getting at, it's so complicated. Have you ever had have you looked at an insurance policy before? How many people out there get this insurance policy and it rolls in about 45 feet thick? I'm exaggerating a little bit. No one's reading that thing, but it's got so many exceptions and exclusions. You've got to have a lawyer to even look at it, or have an agent look at it and talk to you about it. But here's some other interesting things. When is purchasing flood insurance required by law? If you have a federally backed mortgage on a home located in a high-risk zone, federal law requires you to purchase flood insurance to secure that loan. That's interesting also. Here's another thing that's interesting is You can't just wait for flood warning. Say, can I wait? The question they ask is, can I wait until I get a flood warning from the weatherman or woman to buy insurance? There's usually a 30-day wait period. So don't say, I'm going to wait until the flood's rolling in and I'm going to get it. You got to wait 30 days until it goes into effect.
And that's protection for the insurance company to be able to say, well, if the flood was in 30 days of the warning, we could probably call that a pre-existing condition, so we're not going to cover it. You got to get it well in advance so that we can get your premium dollars to cover any damage that comes in.
Can I wait to see the spot on my lung before I buy medical insurance? I mean, that's the similar question in the medical field, right?
Right, and the
pre-existing condition.
Generally, there is that's the issue of pre-existing condition and whether or not they're going to cover that. And that's a big issue about the health care bills going through. So here's another interesting fact: is where was it? Okay, so it said, can I get government aid if I have the NFIP flood insurance? The answer is yes. Having an NFIP, that's the government flood insurance, policy on your building and contents does not prevent you from receiving government aid for flooding. However, the government aid rules normally will reduce any government aid by the amount of NFIP insurance proceeds received. So they'll offset it. So in other words, if you have $200,000 in flood damage and you only have $100,000 in coverage, they're not going to give you $200,000 in federal aid. You're going to get the $100,000 over and above what is covered under your policy. Denise, you had a question?
Yeah, is that going to be FEMA? Like that coverage too is going to impact the insurance?
There's all types of coverage. There's not just FEMA, but there's going to be local coverages. There's state. There's all types of different coverages, but they can offset that. The
ultimate damages can be offset by the aid
NFIP. The NFIP. Whatever. In other words, whatever insurance proceeds you get. And then the government comes in and says, I'm going to give you aid also. You can't double up, is what I'm trying to say.
Got it.
So that's important to note. And then they go into something interesting called flood proofing. I guess you can do flood proofing. They go through how you do flood proofing. And, especially if you have basements, a lot of times they're not covered under a flood insurance policy. A basement might not. So you better double check if you have a basement, even if your flood insurance, whether it covers it or not. Some do, but some might not. So they do have a thing what's called flood proofing, and they talk all about it at this website. And so Seth's going to throw up the website that you can go to on our Twitter page, and we'll be right back to talk a little bit more about the Hurricane Harvey and how it affects you and what you can do.
This is no fun.
Actually, it is kind of fun. It's RadioLawTalk.com. We're glad you're with us.
We're continuing our talk with Denise Dirks, myself, Frederick Penny, and talking about Hurricane Harvey. Some interesting statistics that Denise was telling me.
In Katrina, there was more deaths due to evacuation. And in Texas, the governor wanted everybody to evacuate, and the Houston mayor said no, because he thought there would be more deaths due to evacuations and, millions of people getting on the roads like in Katrina. So there was a little, not dispute between the two of them, but just a dispute of thought as to who would be damaged most. So that happened.
There's some interesting things you got to note. When your property is flooded, the government states you should do the following. They have like a number of things you have to do, and I was reading them and studying them, and it was interesting to me, some of the things. That's not applying in Hurricane Harvey. One is pull your carpet back so it dries out quickly. Hold on. Joey, would you swim over there and get that corner? All right, I'll get this other corner. But here's some important things. Make sure all your policies and any of your information about insurance, or obviously your life insurance and your will and your trust are in a safe place that you can go to. What I do is I have all my children have a lot of those documents. So I've got the original documents. My children have copies of everything, and they live in different states. So if something happens, someone's got something. So do that. That's something that's really important. Also, take photos. And I know you're saying, wait a minute, I'm just trying to survive here. You don't sit there and, someone's drowning and you're trying to, wait a minute, let me take the photo, George. I got to get this for insurance purposes. But if you can, try to take photos. Very difficult, too, in a situation like Hurricane Harvey where the whole house is 5 feet under. That's difficult. You obviously can't do that. But if you can, take some pictures. That's important. I want to read some of these funny ones. Begin to dry out the building and your personal property as soon as possible. Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's still raining outside,
yeah.
But...
Hold on, let me get the pump.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, I've got the foot pump. I'll just sit here all night. So an interesting thing, though, if you don't have a whole lot of water in your property or in your house, they say keep your AC on if it's hot outside, and it helps evaporate the water, or if it's cold out, turn your furnace on to keep it
or use fans.
Yeah, use fans.
You can use fans to dry it out too, because you want to keep away the mold.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And this is actually coming from the government and the NFIP website. But also, some things you can do is clean your floors and walls and cabinets as soon as possible.
Right. And bleach is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then what's interesting, I'm just kind of smiling because concerning the Hurricane Harvey, 99% of this you're not going to be able to do. But this is in general. Do whatever you can to clean, your water lines. Take photos of the interior and exterior. Now, here's what's interesting. Take pictures of the interior and exterior of your home now, before it occurs. Make sure, as a personal injury lawyer, now I do more personal injury, but a lot of it has to do with damages too. And if you want to prove damages, you better have some proof of what you had.
Yeah, the
before.
property damages.
That's exactly right. I'm talking about property damages. And again, if your house burns down, oh yeah, I want to get paid back for the painting I bought from such and such, and this is the painting. Really?
Oh, I had a Monet. Oh my gosh, and we lost it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, the question is, though, you know what they're going to ask? And I've seen this. Well, can you get me the receipt? No, I can't get you a receipt. I don't know where my receipt is.
I bought it on the black market for crying out loud.
Yeah, whatever it is. But
I bought it in Paris for $7, and now it's worth $2,500.
That's exactly right. From Brad Pitt, and he drew it.
He drew it, yes. It was a lighting design.
Or as Fred says, a Monette.
A Monette. That's exactly right.
I like to eat the Parmesan cheese with my spaghetti while looking at my Monette.
I wish Rodriguez was here because at least he would say the wrong singer to all this.
Yes,
I
probably would.
But anyway, you've got to make sure you take pictures and videos. I go to the inside of my house. I've got pictures of all the paintings. I got pictures of even your furniture. Everything that's hanging or sitting there, your jewelry, take pictures, take videos is even better.
Yes.
And then people, what they do is like, oh, I did it. And then they leave it in their house burns, and it's done. So do as I say, which is go give it to your family, friends, have 2 or 3
or
different copies.
Or safety deposit box.
Or the cloud.
Or the cloud.
Or
That's
the
true.
cloud. Actually, that's a really good point there.
But
Cal.
even that, though, seriously, give it to somebody else because they have it. Okay, so you do have it in the cloud, Cal, and I'm not going to...
call me out. It's fine, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to call you out on this. So what happens in a fire if both of you die in the fire and you've got it on the cloud and they don't know how to get into it or that? But at least if the family has it, they've got it specifically. Or, like you said, Cal, make sure your son, your daughter knows how to get into your computer.
Leave that information in your final papers.
That's exactly right. So these are some things you can do in order to prepare, and when the flood comes, what you need to do once you receive this flood. And the most important part is to read your policy. And you're probably going to have to talk to an attorney about the ACC provision, the anti-concurrent causes. And when they start arguing that, do not argue with your insurance company about that. And again, I'm not trying to tout lawyers, but go get a lawyer and have them fight them on it, or talk to your agent. But you know what? Look at getting flood insurance. It's kind of important. And there's issues about renters, too.
Yeah, renters. If you are a rental, if you have a rental or a lease, rental agreement or a lease, you need to read your rental agreement or your lease agreement, because sometimes they put the the damage provision on the renters. So, for example, if it says that natural disasters are accepted and you still have to pay your rent in the event of a natural disaster, then you would have to pay your rent. And in Texas, there was similar laws that said as long as it's partially inhabitable, you still have to pay your rent, the full rent, not partial, but the full.
So there are people in Texas right now, you're saying there are people in Texas right now that because somebody deems that their apartment is partially habitable, even though they really can't get back in and do anything and they got all this flood damage, but they saved their pictures and their art, they still got to pay their rent?
Yes, and
Wow.
if you think of the timing of Harvey, it is really a lot of concern because September 1st, rent's due. Harvey happened the week before. And a lot of people are in this quagmire. They have rental homes or they have apartments, and there's a piece of that rental home that's still up, and it can you can put your stuff into it and perhaps pull a bed in there. Then there's an argument that the renter has to bear that burden from Harvey and the flood and the hurricane and still pay the rent.
I wonder how many creative renters are saying to their landlord, who also lost maybe their house,
Right.
Well, I paid it. I dropped it just before Harvey started. I dropped the rent in cash in your mailbox. And boy, if it went away, but I'd left it there. So yeah, I paid the rent. And you know what? I paid a year in advance too. I did, and I paid it all in cash.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Too bad the cash had this little red dye all over it. I'm not quite sure how it got there.
Yeah,
but
I
anyway.
don't know how that happened.
Well, what? Go ahead.
I just needed to correct something. I had said it was Katrina where the evacuations, there was more death in the evacuations. It wasn't Katrina. I misspoke. It was Hurricane Rita in 2005. There were 60 people died from evacuations out of 100 during that
Todd,
hurricane.
we finally got Denise to make a mistake.
I did it.
Could we get audio of that, Cal? Maybe save it, get it memorialized.
It's on the podcast. I'll put reverb around it.
That's
Shout
exactly
it
what-
from the roof.
Here's a final kind of thought about all this Hurricane Harvey stuff. Be very careful, as lawyers, we deal with this also, in who you're contributing money to help in the Hurricane Harvey relief. Because there are a lot of scams out there. Oh, give money here, give money there. Go to the ones that are, the Red Cross. I'm not pushing Red Cross. Red Cross, you know that it's going to be legitimate. You know that it's going to be, generally speaking, taken care of. And Seth's like, what? No, I don't think so. But all I'm saying is pick someone that you know that you trust.
Yeah, that football player, I can't remember his name, but he just started to gather money, and it's up to like $16 million. And he needs to make sure that he's very careful about what he does with that.
That's right.
Yeah, be careful. Joey's Hurricane Relief Fund. You just go ahead, put it in my PayPal account. I'll make sure it gets where it needs to go.
Yeah,
that would be one I would avoid.
With that voice, I would give them money. So anyway, here's what's interesting. I said interesting too many times. Next week's going to be fun. We're going to be at the Gold Country Fair. It's going to be live from 9 to noon. We're going to have Todd, Braden, and Denise, and I will be stepping away from the mic for a little while. Join us. We will be live. Go to our website, and you can hear it live. You can just click on live.
And we'll be doing some interviews, and you can come meet and greet us. We'd love to see you.
That's enough. Hurricane Harvey. Good luck, those of you people out there. We hope you're okay.
Thanks to Michelle Dintran from University of San Diego.
I just stepped on.
You have been listening to RadioLawTalk.com, a copyrighted presentation of Radio Law Talk Incorporated.